Buy a house, or I'll make sure you never see your grandkids. That's exactly what my son's bride said to me. I'm Thomas Anderson. At my son Nick's wedding, his new bride, Stephanie Clark, thought she had me cornered. See, she thought I was just some broke old mechanic who should be grateful she was joining our pathetic little family. She had no idea what she was about to unleash, because sometimes the quiet ones pack the biggest punch. I just smiled and said, "We'll see about that, Stephanie." That smile should have been her first warning. For months, she'd been treating me like trash, mocking my Walmart clothes, rolling her eyes at my beat-up truck, whispering to Nick about his embarrassing father, but threatening to keep my future grandchildren away from me? That crossed a line she didn't even know existed. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. What happened next changed everything. For Nick, for Stephanie, and for anyone who thinks they can judge a book by its cover. Let me back up and paint you the picture of how pathetic I must have looked to her. After my divorce from Linda in 2019, I deliberately chose to live small. I moved into a $709 a month efficiency apartment on Cedar Rapids East Side. Not exactly prime real estate. The building's from the 70s, with thin walls and a parking lot full of potholes. My neighbors are mostly college students and retirees scraping by on Social Security. I drive a 2011 Ford F-150 with 180,000 miles and rust spots around the wheel wells. The paint's faded. The radio only picks up AM stations. When it rains, there's a slow drip onto the passenger seat. Nick's embarrassed to be seen in it. My wardrobe comes from Walmart clearance racks. $29 suits, $15 work boots that have seen better days. I shop with coupons and buy generic everything. To anyone watching, I look like a man who's given up. And honestly, part of me had. See, when Linda left me for her personal trainer after 28 years of marriage, she took more than just half our assets in the settlement. She took my confidence, my sense of purpose, my belief that the sacrifices I'd made building my business meant anything to the people I loved most. Nick was 30 when the divorce happened, old enough to choose sides, and he chose hers. "Dad, you just let yourself go," he told me during one of our last real conversations. "Mom moved on. She's happy now. But look at you." He wasn't wrong about how I looked, but he was wrong about why. I started dressing down, living small, driving that old truck, because I learned something painful during the divorce proceedings. When people know you have money, they treat you differently. They want things. They expect things. They calculate their relationships with you based on what you might give them. Linda sure did. The personal trainer she married 3 months after our divorce was finalized. He suddenly became very interested in her $3.1 million settlement. Funny how love works. So I decided to test something. What if people thought I had nothing? Would they love me for who I was, or would they write me off entirely? Nick wrote me off. We went from weekly dinners to monthly phone calls to birthday cards with $20 bills tucked inside. He'd moved in with Stephanie about 6 months before the wedding, a downtown loft for $1,850 a month. She's a preschool teacher. He's a software engineer pulling down $95,000 a year. Not exactly struggling, but not wealthy either. When Nick brought her to meet me the first time, I watched her eyes do a quick sweep of my apartment. The secondhand furniture, the generic brand everything, the stack of bills on my little kitchen table. "So you're a mechanic?" she asked, though Nick had never said that. "Retired," I said. "Must be nice," she replied, but her tone suggested otherwise. From that moment, Stephanie Clark made it clear she considered me dead weight. An embarrassing reminder of Nick's modest roots. Someone to be managed, not respected. The worst part? Nick let her. At family dinners, she'd make little comments. "Nick, maybe your dad would like to order from the value menu." Or, "Don't worry, Thomas, I'll cover the tip. I know money's tight." Nick would laugh uncomfortably but never correct her, never defend me. I was becoming invisible in my own son's life, just like I'd planned. But here's what neither of them knew. Being underestimated is the most powerful position you can occupy. The thing about watching your family slip away is that you tell yourself it's temporary, that eventually Nick would see through Stephanie's gold-digging act, that he'd realize what really mattered. But as their wedding approached, I started understanding what I was really going to lose. Nick and I used to talk about everything: business, sports, life. After his mother and I got married, he was the reason I worked 70-hour weeks, building Anderson Manufacturing from a garage startup into something real. Every late night, every missed dinner, every sacrifice, it was all so Nick would have opportunities I never had. Now we barely spoke. The wedding invitation came addressed to Thomas Anderson and guest. No mention of father of the groom, no special seating, just another name on a list. Stephanie had been planning this wedding for 8 months. Every detail calculated to show their friends they were moving up in the world. The venue alone was costing them $8,000. Riverside Country Club, the nicest place in Cedar Rapids. Premium everything, open bar, professional photographer. Nick was paying for most of it. His savings account cleaned out. Credit cards nearly maxed. All to give Stephanie the dream wedding she deserved. Meanwhile, she'd been dropping hints about their next step. Good families help young couples get started, she'd tell Nick when I was around. My friend Ashley's parents put down 20% on their house. The house she had picked out was a $565,000 colonial in West Hills. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, granite countertops. The kind of place young professionals aspire to own. The kind of place that requires parents with deep pockets to make happen. I knew what was coming. The conversation where Nick would awkwardly ask his broke father if he could help with a down payment. The humiliation of having to explain that I couldn't. The confirmation in Stephanie's mind that I was exactly the disappointment she thought I was. But there was something bigger at stake than my pride. Stephanie had been talking about children, a lot. How she wanted 3 kids. How important it was to have them while she was still young. How family support would be essential in those early years. Children need grandparents, she'd say, looking directly at me. Grandparents who can contribute, who are positive influences. The threat was clear. Prove your value or get cut out. Nick was already pulling away. If Stephanie had babies and decided I wasn't worth keeping around, I'd lose my son forever. I'd never meet my grandchildren, never hold them, never be part of their lives. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd built, would die with me. Not because I didn't have the resources to help, but because I'd been too proud to show them. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd hidden my wealth to test if people would love me without it. But the test was backfiring. The people I loved most were walking away because they thought I had nothing to offer. I had options, of course. I could have written Nick a check years ago, bought him the house, made his life easier. But then I'd never know if his love was real or transactional. Now I was running out of time to figure that out. 3 days before the wedding, Nick called me. Dad, I need to ask you something, but I don't want you to feel pressured. Here it came. Stephanie and I have been looking at houses. We found one we really love, but the down payment is, well, it's a stretch. If you could help with even a small amount, we'd pay you back. I could hear Stephanie coaching him in the background, making sure he asked just right, making sure the disappointment would hurt just enough when I said no. How much do you need? I asked. Well, ideally, we'd need about $113,000 for 20% down. $113,000. I spent more than that on dinner parties when I was married to Linda. I'll think about it, I said. But I already knew this was my last chance. Either I'd find out if Nick truly loved me, or I'd lose him forever. The confrontation came during cocktail hour at the wedding. September 23rd, 3:15 p.m., according to my phone. I was standing near the bar, nursing a Coke and watching Nick greet guests. He looked happy. Nervous, but happy. For a moment, I remembered the little boy who used to help me in the garage, asking 1,000 questions about how engines worked. Thomas. Stephanie appeared beside me in her $3,200 Vera Wang dress. Borrowed, I'd later learn, from a friend, but it looked good on her. She looked like money, which was the point. Beautiful ceremony, I said. We need to talk. She led me to a quiet corner near the country club's windows. The golf course stretched out behind us, all manicured green perfection, the kind of view that costs extra. Nick told me he asked you about the house, she said. He did. And? I said I'd think about it. Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Let me help you think faster. That house isn't just about Nick and me. It's about our future children, your future grandchildren. I understand that. Do you? Because here's what I think you don't understand, Thomas. Nick deserves better than your example. What example is that? Living in that dump, driving that rust bucket, shopping at Walmart like some... She caught herself, but I knew where that sentence was headed. Like some what? Like someone who's given up. Nick's embarrassed by you. Do you know that? He makes excuses when friends ask about his family. My dad's had a hard time since the divorce. That's what he tells people. Each word hit like a small punch, because there was truth in it. Nick was embarrassed. I'd seen it in his eyes. So here's what's going to happen, Stephanie continued. You're going to help us with that house. Not a loan, a gift, because good fathers invest in their children's futures. And if I don't? If you don't, I'll make sure Nick understands exactly what kind of man his father really is. Selfish, bitter, a man who puts his own grudges ahead of his son's happiness. And she was good, I'll give her that. She'd identified my deepest fear and weaponized it. There's more, she said. Nick and I want children soon, 3 of them. Children need stability. They need a safe neighborhood, good schools, and they need grandparents who add value to their lives. Value? Financial support, babysitting, college funds, the things loving grandparents do. But if you're going to be a burden instead of a blessing? She shrugged. Well, my parents live in Portland. They'd love to be the primary grandparents. The threat was crystal clear. Pay up or get cut out. Nick loves you, she said, her voice softer now. But love only goes so far when someone refuses to help family, when they choose to hoard money while their children struggle. Hoarding money, if she only knew. How much do you have saved up, Thomas? Honestly, after the divorce, after years of living like you do, there must be something left. I almost laughed. Something left. I've been researching, she continued. Anderson Manufacturing sold for good money back in the day. Even after the divorce settlement, you should have something. But you live like a hermit. So where's the money? She'd done her homework, sort of. She knew about the business sale. She knew about the divorce. She just had the numbers wrong by about $12 million. Maybe I spent it, I said. On what? That apartment? That truck? Your Walmart wardrobe? Maybe I lost it. Bad investments, medical bills. Maybe. Or maybe you're sitting on it like some bitter old man who'd rather take it to the grave than help his son. The accusation stung because I knew how it looked. How I looked. The house offer expires Monday, she said. The seller has other interested buyers. If we lose it because you're too cheap to help. She let the sentence hang. What exactly are you asking for? The full down payment, $113,000. Consider it an investment in your future access to grandchildren. An investment in access, like my relationship with my future grandchildren, was a business transaction. And if I say no, then I guess we'll see how important family really is to you. Her smile was poison sweet. Nick's watching us, by the way. He's hoping you'll do the right thing. Don't disappoint him again. I looked across the room. Nick was indeed watching, trying to read our body language. 20 years of building a business, 31 years of being his father, and it came down to this. Prove your worth with a check or lose him forever. I'll give you my answer tonight, I said. Perfect. During your father of the groom toast. Make it public. Show everyone what kind of father you really are. She walked away, leaving me alone with my Coke and my thoughts. But Stephanie Clark had just made the biggest mistake of her life. She'd given me a public platform. The rest of cocktail hour passed in a blur. But 2 things happened that should have warned Stephanie what was coming. First, my phone rang during the photo session. I stepped away from the family pictures, which felt appropriate since I was clearly the odd man out anyway. Thomas, it's Patricia Hayes. Patricia, my private investigator. Yes, I had a private investigator. When someone threatens your family, you do your homework. Perfect timing, I said, keeping my voice low. Is the paperwork ready? Everything's finalized. Bank statements, property records, the whole package. Plus that additional research you requested on Ms. Clark. 3 previous engagements, just like you suspected. The families all have similar stories. I'd hired Patricia 6 months ago, right after Stephanie started making comments about family financial support. Something about her felt wrong. Too calculated. Too focused on money for someone who claimed to love Nick for who he was. And the documentation is in the leather portfolio we discussed, Patricia continued. Judge Brooks confirmed he'll be available if needed. Judge Henry Brooks, my old friend from the Rotary Club, the man who'd officiated Nick's wedding as a favor to me, the same man who knew exactly what Thomas Anderson was worth, because he'd handled the legal paperwork when I sold my business. Thanks, Patricia. Hopefully I won't need any of it, but I was pretty sure I would. The second warning came during the reception entrance. As the wedding party was announced, Judge Brooks caught my eye and walked over. Tom Anderson, he said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Good to see you again. Likewise, Henry. How's retirement treating you? Still keeping busy with your investments? Stephanie was close enough to overhear. I saw her head turn slightly, trying to listen without being obvious. Oh, you know me. Always looking for the next opportunity. Smart man. The commercial real estate market has been very good to you. Henry smiled knowingly. We should catch up properly soon. I'd love to hear about your latest projects. I watched Stephanie's face, a flicker of confusion. Why would a judge be talking to a broke mechanic about investments and real estate projects? Absolutely, I said. We'll set something up. After Henry walked away, Stephanie appeared at my elbow. How do you know Judge Brooks? Rotary Club. We've been members for years. He seemed to think you invest in things. I read the Wall Street Journal. Sometimes I have opinions. She didn't look convinced, but Nick was calling her over for more photos. The truth was, Henry Brooks had been handling my legal affairs since 2015. He'd structured the sale of Anderson Manufacturing. He'd set up Nick's trust fund. He'd drafted the paperwork for my commercial property investments. If anyone knew the real Thomas Anderson, it was Henry Brooks. And he'd agreed to officiate Nick's wedding specifically so he could witness whatever was about to happen. Tom, he'd said when I asked him, if that girl is planning what you think she's planning, she should know who she's messing with. Now, watching Nick and Stephanie pose for pictures, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Control. For the first time since this whole ordeal started, I wasn't reacting to their moves. I was making my own. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. Documentation is in the leather portfolio behind the bar. Nancy Miller confirmed she'll have a mic ready when you need it. Nancy Miller, the wedding planner, another member of my quiet support network. She'd been the event coordinator for Anderson Manufacturing's annual parties back in the day. She knew exactly who I was and what I was capable of. The pieces were falling into place. Dinner was announced. Nick and Stephanie took their seats at the head table. I was relegated to table 7, near the back, with some distant cousins and family friends I barely knew. Perfect. Stephanie wanted me to feel small and powerless, to know my place in their new world order. She had no idea that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone ignores. As the salad course was served, I excused myself and walked to the bar. The leather portfolio was exactly where Patricia said it would be. I slipped it under my jacket and returned to my table. Inside that portfolio was enough documentation to change the course of this entire evening. The only question was whether I'd have the courage to use it. Dinner service started at 5:30 p.m. sharp. Chicken or salmon, $85 a plate, according to the menu I'd seen Nick agonizing over during planning. The kind of detail that matters when you're stretching every dollar to create an impression. I ordered the chicken. Stephanie, I noticed, went with the salmon. Top shelf all the way. The speeches began during dessert. Best man first, maid of honor second, then parents. Linda spoke via video call from her new home in Phoenix. Apparently she and the personal trainer were too busy enjoying her settlement money to make the trip. Then it was Stephanie's turn. She stood gracefully, champagne glass in hand, and smiled at the 152 guests. In the soft lighting, she looked radiant, innocent, like the sweet preschool teacher she claimed to be. "Thank you all for celebrating with Nick and me tonight," she began. "This day wouldn't have been possible without the love and support of family." Her eyes swept the room, lingering on various guests as she spoke. "Nick and I are so grateful to everyone who's contributed to making our dreams come true. Some families believe in investing in the next generation. They understand that when young couples get a strong start, everyone benefits." She paused for applause. "Got it too?" The crowd was eating this up. "We've been so blessed by the generous families here tonight. Families who understand what it means to put love into action." Another pause, another round of polite clapping. Then her eyes found mine. Of course, not everyone shows love the same way. Some people prefer to hold back, to test relationships instead of investing in them. But Nick and I believe that families should lift each other up, not hold each other down. The crowd was still smiling, but I caught a few confused glances. Where was this going? "That's why we're so hoping." She looked directly at Nick, then back at me. "So hoping that Nick's father will find it in his heart to help us with our next chapter. To show that family support means more than just showing up. It means showing up with real investment in our future." The room went quiet. This wasn't a typical wedding speech anymore. This was a public request for money, disguised as sentiment. Nick and I have found the perfect home for starting our family. A place where our children, Thomas's future grandchildren, can grow up safe and loved. But dreams require support. They require family members who are willing to put their money where their love is. I felt 152 pairs of eyes turning toward me. The expectation was palpable. The father of the groom being called out to step up financially. "So I'd like to raise a glass to Thomas Anderson," Stephanie continued, "and to the decision he'll be making tonight. The decision that will show all of us what kind of grandfather he wants to be." She raised her champagne glass. The crowd raised theirs, uncertainly. "To family investment," she said, "and to the courage to choose love over selfishness." The toast was drunk. Polite applause followed. But the discomfort in the room was obvious. People were whispering. Nick looked mortified. Even Stephanie's own parents seemed uncomfortable with their daughter's public ultimatum. She sat down, satisfied. The trap was set. In front of 152 witnesses, she'd made it clear that Thomas Anderson's love for his son would be measured by his willingness to write a check. Now it was my turn. I stood slowly. Nancy Miller appeared beside me with a wireless microphone, right on cue. The room quieted as all attention focused on the back corner table, where the embarrassing father sat. "Thank you, Stephanie," I said. "That was illuminating." A few nervous chuckles. People were expecting an awkward, defensive response from a cornered old man. I do appreciate being put on the spot like that, in front of all these lovely people. It shows real character. Nick was trying to catch my eye, probably hoping I'd just sit down and minimize the damage. But I was just getting started. "Family support is important," I continued, walking slowly toward the head table. "You're absolutely right about that, Stephanie. And I've been thinking about your request. Your demand, really." The room was dead silent now. This was not going according to Stephanie's script. "See, you want me to prove my love for Nick by buying you a house. A $565,000 house in West Hills, to be precise. You want me to put up the $113,000 down payment as a gift. Not a loan. A gift." Stephanie's smile was frozen in place, but I could see panic starting in her eyes. "And you've made it clear what happens if I don't. I lose access to my future grandchildren. I get cut out of Nick's life, replaced by your parents in Portland, who would, quote, love to be the primary grandparents." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This was getting uncomfortable, fast. But here's the thing about family support, Stephanie. It goes both ways. When you join a family, you're supposed to add to it, not subtract from it. You're supposed to bring people together, not drive them apart. Nick started to stand, probably to stop whatever was coming, but Judge Brooks, who had been quietly positioning himself near the head table, gestured for him to sit. "So, before I answer your very public request," I said, reaching into my jacket for the leather portfolio. I think our guests deserve to know exactly what kind of family support they're witnessing tonight. The portfolio hit the table with a soft thud. Stephanie went pale. Because you're right about one thing, Stephanie. This is about love versus selfishness. And it's time everyone here learned which one of us is which. The leather portfolio sat on the table like a bomb waiting to go off. Stephanie stared at it, and for the first time all evening, she wasn't in control. You did your research on me, didn't you, Stephanie? I said, opening the portfolio slowly. Anderson Manufacturing. You found out about the sale. You found out about my divorce. You thought you had the whole picture. I pulled out the first document. Bank letterhead, official seals, numbers that made people gasp when they saw them. But here's what you missed in your research. Anderson Manufacturing didn't just sell for good money, as you put it. It sold for exactly $15.2 million on December 18th, 2018. I held up the sale contract. Judge Brooks nodded his confirmation from the sidelines. After taxes, legal fees, and other expenses, I netted $12.8 million. Then came the divorce. Stephanie was gripping her champagne glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. Now, my ex-wife Linda did take a significant settlement. $3.1 million, to be exact, plus the house in Westwood, plus half of our retirement accounts. The personal trainer she married 3 months later was very appreciative. A few uncomfortable laughs from the crowd. People were starting to understand this wasn't going where they expected. But that still left me with $9.7 million in liquid assets. Which brings us to the question you asked me an hour ago. Where did the money go? I pulled out the second document. A bank statement from Pinnacle Private Banking. Current liquid assets as of September 20th, 2023, $12.1 million. The gasps were audible now. Nick looked like he'd been hit by a truck. You see, Stephanie, I didn't lose the money. I didn't waste it. I invested it. And I've been living off the returns while the principal grew. $400,000 a year in passive income, to be precise. That's about $33,000 a month. For perspective, that's more than double what Nick makes in his software engineering job. The room was dead silent, except for the sound of someone's chair creaking as they leaned forward to get a better look. But wait, there's more, I said, channeling my inner infomercial narrator. Because the business sale wasn't my only investment. Document number 3, property deeds. 3 commercial buildings in Cedar Rapids, purchased between 2019 and 2022. Total current value, $2.8 million. Monthly rental income, $31,000. I looked directly at Stephanie. Her face had gone from pale to ashen. So when you demanded that I prove my love for Nick by writing a check for $113,000, you were asking me to spend about, 1 month's income. The math hit the room like a physical force. People were doing the calculations in their heads, realizing exactly how wealthy the broke old mechanic actually was. But here's my favorite part, I continued, pulling out document number 4. Nick's trust fund. Nick actually stood up at this. What trust fund? The one I established for you in 2020. $2.3 million, fully vested when you turn 35, which is in 4 years, by the way. My son sat down hard. Stephanie looked like she was going to be sick. The trust was designed to give you financial security without making you dependent on wealth. I wanted you to build your own life, your own career, your own character. The money would be there when you were mature enough to handle it responsibly. I paused to let that sink in. Of course, the trust does have some conditions. It can be dissolved if the beneficiary makes decisions that are, let's say, contrary to family values, threatening to cut family members out of children's lives, for example. That would be grounds for dissolution. The threat was clear and legal. Judge Brooks had drafted the paperwork personally. So, to answer your question, Stephanie, yes, I absolutely have the money to buy you that house. I could buy you 10 houses. I could pay cash for the entire West Hills neighborhood if I wanted to. I walked closer to her, my voice dropping to a conversational level that somehow carried throughout the silent room. But you made one crucial mistake in your research. You assumed that having money means I'm obligated to spend it on people who threaten my family relationships. Now for the kill shot. Which brings me to this, I said, pulling out the final document. Patricia Hayes, private investigator, 3 months of research into one Stephanie Clark, age 29, formerly Rebecca Martinez, formerly Amanda Peterson, formerly Sarah Williams. Stephanie's champagne glass finally did shatter, right onto her $3,200 borrowed dress. 3 previous engagements to men from wealthy families. 3 previous demands for house down payments. 3 previous families who eventually discovered that sweet preschool teacher, Stephanie, was actually a professional gold digger who researches her targets through social media, public records, and basic Google searches. I spread the photos across the table. Stephanie with previous fiancés, at expensive restaurants, in luxury cars, always with men who looked like they came from money. The Patterson family in Iowa City, the Mitchell family in Des Moines, the Johnson family in Davenport, all have very similar stories about their son's loving girlfriend, who became very interested in family financial support once wedding planning began. Nick was staring at his new wife like he'd never seen her before. Stephanie, or Rebecca, or Amanda, or Sarah, you picked the wrong family this time, because this family does its homework. Judge Brooks stepped forward. Thomas, as the officiant of this ceremony, I feel obligated to mention that marriage contracts can be annulled within 72 hours if one party has committed fraud regarding their identity or intentions. The legal implications hit the room like a second bomb. So here's my counteroffer, I said, returning to the microphone. Nick, your trust fund remains intact. Your inheritance remains intact. You'll never have to worry about money because you chose love over greed. I turned back to Stephanie. But you, Stephanie, get exactly what you've earned. Nothing. No house, no trust fund access, no financial support from this family. And if you even think about following through on your threat to keep future grandchildren away from me, I'll make sure every family in Iowa knows exactly who you are and what you do. The portfolio closed with a soft snap. Now then, I said, raising my water glass, who wants to toast a family? Real family. The kind that doesn't come with a price tag. The silence after my toast lasted exactly 7 seconds. I counted. Then chaos erupted. Stephanie shot to her feet, knocking over her chair. This is insane. Nick, he's lying. Those documents are fake. But Nick wasn't looking at her anymore. He was staring at me with a mixture of shock, hurt, and something that might have been understanding. Dad, he said quietly, is this real? All of it? Every word. Judge Brooks stepped forward with the calm authority of a man who'd spent 30 years settling disputes. I can verify the authenticity of these documents. I personally handled the business sale, the trust fund establishment, and the property acquisitions. Mr. Anderson is worth considerably more than $15 million when you include his real estate holdings and investment portfolio. Stephanie wheeled on Nick. You have to choose, right now, between me and this manipulative old man who's been lying to you for years. Nick looked between us, his new wife, desperate and caught, his father, wealthy beyond imagination, and offering him a fortune. Why, Nick asked me, why hide this? Why live like you do? Why let me think you were broke? It was the question I'd been dreading, the one that would determine whether we had a relationship worth saving. Because I needed to know if you love me or my money. The words hit him like a physical blow. And what did you conclude? That you loved your mother's money enough to choose her side in the divorce. That you loved Stephanie's validation enough to let her insult me for months. And that you were willing to ask me for $113,000 while thinking I could barely afford it. Nick flinched at each point, because they were all true. But, I continued, you also asked it as a loan, not a gift. You offered to pay me back. And you called me Dad when you asked, not Thomas. That told me something too. What? That you still love me. You're just young and stupid and head over heels for a woman who was playing you. Stephanie tried one more desperate play. Nick, don't let him manipulate you. He's trying to control your life with money. No, Nick said, his voice stronger now. He's trying to protect his life from people who want to control him with threats. He turned to face her fully. Is it true? About the other families? Those are lies. Private investigators can fake anything. But her protestation sounded hollow. The evidence was too detailed, too specific, and frankly, her reaction to being exposed told the whole story. Judge Brooks cleared his throat. If I may suggest, this discussion might be better continued privately. We have 150 guests who are witnessing some very personal family matters. He was right. The entire room was frozen, watching our family drama unfold like a car accident they couldn't look away from. Actually, I said, I think the guests deserve to know how this ends. They witnessed the accusations. They should witness the resolution. I walked back to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for disrupting what should have been a celebration, but sometimes family business becomes public when someone makes it public. I looked directly at Stephanie. You wanted a public answer to your public demand. Here it is. The Anderson family does not negotiate with extortion. We do not reward threats, and we do not buy relationships. Then I turned to Nick. Son, your trust fund is secure. Your inheritance is secure. Your relationship with me is secure. The only thing that's not secure is a marriage based on fraud. Nick looked at Stephanie one last time. Is any of it true? About your name? About the other families? She could have come clean, could have apologized, could have claimed temporary insanity or desperation or love gone wrong. Instead, she doubled down. I don't have to listen to this. Nick, if you believe him over me, then we're done. It was the worst possible response, an ultimatum when she had no leverage left. Nick's answer was quiet but firm. Then we're done. The marriage lasted exactly 4 hours and 37 minutes. Judge Brooks stepped forward one final time. Given the circumstances and the evidence of fraudulent intent, I'm prepared to expedite an annulment hearing if Mr. Nick Anderson wishes to file. I do, Nick said. Stephanie looked around the room, probably calculating whether anyone would still support her. But the evidence was overwhelming, the pattern too clear, the targeting too obvious. Fine, she spat. Keep your pathetic family and your dirty money. I never loved either of you anyway. She grabbed her purse and stalked toward the exit, her borrowed wedding dress trailing behind her. A few guests actually applauded as she left. The door slammed. The reverberations echoed through the country club's dining room. Nick sat down heavily and put his head in his hands. I walked over and sat beside him. You okay? Am I okay? Dad, I just found out my wife is a fraud and my father is a millionaire in the same 5 minutes, at my wedding reception, with 150 people watching. When he put it like that, it did sound pretty overwhelming. For what it's worth, I said, I would have told you about the money, eventually. Probably when you turned 35 and got the trust fund. I just wanted you to build your own life first. He looked up at me. And the apartment, the truck, the Walmart clothes? All real. I like living simply. Money doesn't have to change how you live if you don't let it. But you could afford... I can afford anything. That's exactly why I choose to live like I do. He stared at me for a long moment. Then, incredibly, he started laughing. What's funny? I just married a gold digger who was after money you don't even spend. That's pretty ironic. Yeah, it really was. The wedding ended at 7:20 p.m., 2 hours ahead of schedule. Word travels fast in Cedar Rapids, especially when it involves public humiliation at the country club. By Sunday morning, the story was everywhere, not just locally. The wedding photographer had posted a few choice moments on social media before realizing what she'd captured. Wedding Drama Rocks Country Club became the Cedar Rapids Gazette's Monday front page story. The fallout was immediate and far-reaching. Stephanie's teaching position at Riverside Elementary came under immediate review. The school district takes moral character seriously when it comes to faculty, and defrauding families doesn't exactly qualify as moral character. Her principal called an emergency meeting Monday morning. By Tuesday, she was on administrative leave pending investigation. Her landlord in Des Moines, she'd been maintaining an apartment there while claiming to live with Nick, received several calls from previous victims of Stephanie's schemes. Turns out she'd been running similar cons in multiple cities. The landlord evicted her Wednesday, but the real consequences went deeper than just Stephanie's immediate problems. Nick moved back into his apartment, but the damage to his credit was significant. The wedding had cost him his savings and maxed his credit cards. The engagement ring alone was $15,000. Bought on a payment plan he'd still be making for 2 years. "I feel like an idiot," he told me over coffee Tuesday morning. "How did I not see it?" "She was good at what she did," I said. "Professional manipulation requires skill." But the signs were there. The way she talked about money, the way she researched our family, the way she... He stopped. The way she what? The way she talked about you. "I should have defended you. I'm sorry, Dad." It was the apology I'd been waiting 3 years to hear. "Why didn't you?" I asked, and Nick stared into his coffee. "Because she made me feel ashamed of our family, of you. She'd talk about her friends whose parents were lawyers and doctors and business owners, and then she'd look at your apartment, your truck, your clothes, and you believed her version of success." "Yeah, I did, and I'm sorry." "What changed your mind?" "Watching you at that podium, watching you take control, watching you demonstrate actual power instead of just talking about it." He looked up. "You didn't have to expose her like that. You could have just written the check and avoided the drama. But you chose principles over peace. Sometimes principles matter more than peace. I'm learning that." The conversation was interrupted by my phone. Patricia Hayes checking in. "Thomas, I wanted to update you on the Stephanie situation." I put her on speaker so Nick could hear. "She's already in contact with a new target. David Morrison, 34, software executive in Minneapolis. His mother owns 3 hotels. Stephanie reached out through Instagram yesterday." Nick's face went dark. "She's already hunting again?" "Professional predators don't stop," Patricia said. "They just find new hunting grounds. But I've taken the liberty of contacting the Morrison family directly. They were very grateful for the warning." "What about the other families she targeted?" Nick asked. "I'm reaching out to all of them. The Pattersons in Iowa City want to pursue fraud charges. The Johnsons in Davenport are considering a civil suit. The Mitchells in Des Moines just want her to stay away." After we hung up, Nick was quiet for a long time. "What are you thinking?" I asked. "I'm thinking about the other guys, the ones she fooled before me. They probably felt just as stupid as I do right now." "Probably. But they didn't have a father with the resources to fight back." "No, they didn't. So she just got away with it. Until now." "Until now." Nick made a decision. I want to help them. The other families. Whatever legal action they want to take, I'll support it. Testimony, evidence, whatever they need. I was proud of him in that moment. Taking responsibility, choosing justice over convenience. That's going to be expensive. Legal fees, travel costs, time off work. I know, but it's the right thing to do. Yes, it is. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a checkbook. Real paper checks. The kind old-fashioned millionaires still use. "What are you doing?" "Covering your legal expenses? Consider it an early withdrawal from your trust fund." "Dad, I can't." "You're not asking for a house. You're not threatening to cut me out of your life. You're asking for help to do the right thing. That's exactly the kind of family support I'm happy to provide." I wrote the check for $25,000. It was probably more than he'd need, but it would cover everything and leave him with a cushion. Nick stared at the check. "This is more money than I make in 6 months. It's also less than I make in 3 weeks. Perspective, son." "I don't know how to thank you." "Don't thank me. Just promise me something." "Anything." "Next time someone tries to make you choose between love and money, choose love. But make sure you know the difference between love and manipulation." "How do I tell the difference?" "Love builds you up. Manipulation tears other people down. Love adds to your family. Manipulation subtracts from it. Love never comes with ultimatums." Nick nodded slowly. "Stephanie never built anything up, did she? She just pointed out what was wrong with everything, including me, especially you, and I let her. You were in love, or what you thought was love. What was it really?" "A very expensive lesson." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the city wake up outside the coffee shop window. "Can I ask you something?" Nick said. "Sure." "The money, the real estate, the investments, how much is it really worth?" I considered whether to tell him the full truth, decided he'd earned it. About 18 million as of last month, give or take. Nick nearly choked on his coffee. 18 million? The business sale was just the beginning. I've been investing for 4 years. Compound interest is a beautiful thing. Jesus, Dad, you're actually rich. I'm actually comfortable. There's a difference. What's the difference? Rich people worry about losing their money. Comfortable people know there's always more where that came from. And which are you? I haven't worried about money in 3 years. I worry about family, about relationships, about whether the people I love actually love me back. And now you know? Now I know. 3 months later, Nick and I were having dinner at Romano's. A real restaurant, not fast food, but not pretentious either. Just good food and honest conversation. The annulment had gone through without a hitch. Stephanie didn't contest it, probably because fighting would have meant more public scrutiny of her methods. She'd quietly left Cedar Rapids and, according to Patricia's monitoring, was now working as a life coach in Phoenix. Different scam, same fundamental approach. The other families she'd targeted had mixed results with their legal actions. The Pattersons got a small settlement. The Johnsons decided the emotional cost wasn't worth pursuing. The Mitchells just wanted closure, but word had spread through social media, and Stephanie's future hunting grounds were significantly limited. "How's the new apartment?" I asked Nick. "Good, really good. Having actual savings again feels incredible." He'd moved into a nicer place, not extravagant, but comfortable. I'd offered to pay for it, but he'd insisted on earning it himself. The trust fund could wait until he was 35. The lesson had been learned. "Any dating prospects?" "Actually, yeah. Her name's Rachel. She's a veterinarian." "What does she think about your family's situation?" Nick grinned. "I told her my dad was worth about $18 million. And she asked if you were single." I laughed, but what did you tell her? "That you're probably too smart to fall for that kind of obvious gold digging." "Probably. But seriously, Dad, she doesn't care about the money. She makes good money herself, loves her job, has her own place." When I told her the whole Stephanie story, her main reaction was concern about whether I was okay emotionally. "That's a good sign." "Yeah, I think so too." We ordered dessert, something I wouldn't have done during my broke mechanic phase when every dollar supposedly mattered. "Can I ask you something personal?" Nick said. "Shoot. Are you lonely? Living in that apartment, driving that truck, shopping at Walmart?" It was a fair question, one I'd been asking myself lately. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but I'm lonely by choice, not circumstance. There's a difference." "What's the difference?" "Lonely by circumstance means you can't find people who want to be around you. Lonely by choice means you're waiting for people who want to be around you for the right reasons." "And you think the money gets in the way of that?" "I think the money attracts the wrong people and scares away some of the right people." "Like who?" "Like that veterinarian you're dating. If she knew I was worth 18 million, would she be more or less interested in getting to know me?" Nick considered this. "Probably less. Rachel's not impressed by money. She's impressed by character." "Exactly my point. So what's the solution? Live like a hermit forever?" "No, live authentically but carefully. The money is a tool, not an identity." I pulled out my phone and showed him a text message. "Speaking of which, I've been thinking about this." The text was from Patricia Hayes. Property available, 47-acre ranch outside Marion. Previous owner was an elderly farmer, passed away peacefully. Family wants quick sale, $890,000. "A ranch?" Nick asked. 47 acres. Farmhouse built in 1952, renovated in 2018. Barn, workshop, pond, apple orchard. 20 minutes from town, but feels like another world. "You want to buy a ranch?" "I want to build something. Not for profit, for purpose. Maybe a place where families can come for retreats. Maybe a workshop space for teaching business skills to young entrepreneurs. Maybe just a place where people can remember what matters." Nick studied the photos on my phone. "This looks expensive to maintain." "Less expensive than you'd think, and a lot more meaningful than watching investment portfolios grow." "What about the apartment, the truck, the simple living philosophy?" "I can live simply on a ranch too. Simple doesn't mean small. Simple means intentional. He handed my phone back. When are you going to look at it? This weekend. Want to come with me? Absolutely. We finished dinner in comfortable silence, both lost in our own thoughts about second chances and new beginnings. As we walked to the parking lot, Nick stopped. Dad? Yeah? Thank you for not giving up on me, for not writing me off when I chose Stephanie's side. You're my son. I wasn't going anywhere. Even when I was being an idiot, especially when you were being an idiot, that's when kids need their parents most. Nick hugged me, the first real hug we'd shared since before the divorce. I love you, Dad. I love you too, son. As we drove away in our separate cars, his modest sedan, my beat-up truck, I thought about rangjoy, boundaries, the lines we draw to protect ourselves and the people we care about. Stephanie had tried to erase my boundaries with threats and manipulation, but boundaries aren't walls meant to keep people out. They're fences meant to help people understand how to love you properly. Nick was learning that lesson. So was I. And maybe on a 47-acre ranch outside Marion, we could both practice it together. Sometimes the quiet ones don't just pack the biggest punch. Sometimes they build the strongest foundations too.